Hi. Okay. So I saw an article and I can't believe that we're in this day and age. The article actually said, does Santa need to be female or gender neutral? I'm doing this video. Now, before I get a community after me, I checked the comments and there were actually people who were gay, bisexual, transgender, and they said, okay, a line has been crossed. You leave Santa alone. Which, and I don't mean this to sound bad, because I have a lot of gay and transgender friends, and they're usually saying, yeah, we do. I mean, Santa needs to be female to go along with, because it's that time. But they were saying, no, leave Santa alone. This is a line that's been crossed. That's one character that needs to be left alone. However, there were a lot of people that were saying this is a fictional character. Why are you getting so upset? A lot of other people were saying that Santa is an American idea, and it started in the 1800s with the poem Night Before Christmas. This is why I'm making the video. So, I have a book series that is The Galactic Realms, and I researched Santa Claus because Father Christmas, Saint Nicholas. Saint Nicholas is an actual person. Santa Claus is based off of an actual man. How many people actually know that? Now, I'm not shaming anybody or anything like that. It's just something that has, over the centuries, because of the fact that the legend has been morphed so much, it's a natural thing. It happens. So, Saint Nicholas, his origin is 4th century modern day Turkey. So the Mediterranean is where he started. And before you get the idea, well, it's just one of those things where he kind of drifted, and kind of like King Arthur, where you get the idea that he may have existed. Okay, he was a saint. There is documentation. They actually have some documentation, not a lot. They know that he was in prison a couple of times, even defrocked and put into prison. There is, from what I was reading, he went on several pilgrimages, and he was best known for secretly giving gifts to the poor. Not so secretly giving. And so he also paid a couple dowries, and apparently the dowries that he paid were so that these young ladies would stay out of prostitution. And I don't know the full story. I don't remember the full story with that. And another story that I remember is that he resurrected a couple children who were killed. However, that just seems weird, but a lot of miracles were happening. We've had miracles happen today, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to question. There is, 200 years after he died. Now, he died December 6th. And 200 years after his passing, there was a church that was built, St. Nicholas Church, and it was built over the ruins of the church that he was the bishop to. And it was, of course, the final resting place for him. And that particular St. Nicholas Church is still in Turkey. He was actually St. Nicholas of Myra. Myra is now, I don't know what it is in modern day Turkey. I will, of course, put it in the description. All of that stuff. Because it changes over Athens is still Athens, but it's just one of those things. But yeah, Myra, and it could be Myra, but he was St. Nicholas of Myra, and I could be saying that wrong. But it is in Turkey. The church that was built, St. Nicholas Church, is still there. However, his skeleton, his remains, are in Italy. There was like a big war that happened, and to save his remains, because, there were all sorts of warfare that was going on during that time, religious warfare and all that, and so to save his remains, they were taken over to Italy. And again, I will put in the description where his remains are. So you have the documentation, and you have the place, and it's not a church anymore, it is a museum. And you have the place of his remains. So that's 3. So St. Nicholas was an actual person, and he was known for giving gifts, secretly. Now move ahead to the 16th century, King Henry VIII. And through the years, people would have St. Nicholas Day, the day of St. Nicholas. There was feasting, and children would receive gifts and everything. Well, then all of a sudden it changed. And Henry VIII decided to move this feasting day over to December the 25th. Why it decided to change, nobody knows. However, all of a sudden, this concept changed. He decided the idea of St. Nicholas was still there, but it was modernized to fit the Tudor idea. There was Father Christmas. And the look was a large guy, and I'm guessing because King Henry VIII was big. So he was kind of bringing himself into the holiday spirit. That guy was an arrogant son of a gun. I've been watching a lot of documentaries while working, and yeah, he was a very arrogant son of a gun. And among other things, but very arrogant, as was his dad. But wearing a red or green fur coat. And of course, we all know from the famous story, the famous Dickens story, that's The Ghost of Christmas Present. Well, the whole personality of this Father Christmas was joy and happiness and good tidings, bring merriment and wine and all of that. I'm guessing also that's how King Henry saw himself, but that's not really what he was. Unfortunately, in all honesty, I know we see him as the tyrant, but he was very sick. I will defend him on that part because of the fact that jousting accident really messed him up. And plus he was just money hungry, so between the two, yeah. And because when he was younger, he was fine, but that jousting accident really messed him up. But anyway, back to the facts. So, the legend of St. Nicholas had continued after his death. Children were receiving gifts on the 6th, and there was feasting and all of this. But then, in the 16th century with Henry VIII, it changed to December the 25th to coincide with the birth of Jesus. And at least I'm pretty sure that's what I read. If not, I will correct it in the description. And because again, there was a lot of religious stuff going on between the Protestant and Catholic thing, and because again, Henry VIII and his wife Anne Boleyn and all of that, and a lot of warfare and everything. But anyway, whole other video. Go watch the documentary. Documentaries. But so Father Christmas was basically St. Nicholas, but in another form. And considering Henry VIII was so arrogant and wanted to make himself everything that was going on, he was just making himself St. Nicholas. Now, another person in history is Martin Luther. Martin Luther Martin Luther loved Christmas. And there was another thing that I was reading. I was trying to figure out the whole Kris Kringle thing. Kris Kringle is an American idea of and I know I'm going to screw it up. I should have written it down. And forgive me for doing it. I will, of course, put it in the description if I'm saying it wrong, but it's like Christkind. And what it is Martin Luther came up with this. He was trying to bring the Christ child back into Christmas. I mean, that was his whole goal. And Christkind is like this sprite-like child or angelic child. It has blonde hair and angel wings and brings gifts to the children. Now, the children are not supposed to see Christkind, and or else they don't receive the gifts. So that would explain. So far, that kind of gives the idea. Okay, so we have the legend of, before I get ahead of myself, because I do that, we have 4th century St. Nicholas. And of course, his legend has become a big thing. And it's being celebrated all over the place December 6th. Now all of a sudden we have the fur-lined coat being green or red. Well, now we know it as red. It's become the iconic red. And Martin Luther, of course, he had already been known for giving gifts out secretly. Now Martin Luther has this angelic child who is giving gifts out, and the children are not supposed to see the child giving the gifts out. And from what I was reading, the Christkind and I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, I do apologize, is celebrated all over the world. I mean, Brazil, and as far as Brazil, and I thought it was just like Austria and Germany and in that area, but no, it goes as far as Brazil. So, so we have all that. And so basically, St. Nicholas, I forgot one. There's in Dutch, Belgian, and the Swiss, they have Sinterklaas. And I'm sure you remember that because in the old Miracle on 34th Street, there's the little Dutch girl who sings with Santa Claus. And of course it just throws Natalie Wood's character for a loop, and it's like, well, he has to be Santa Claus because he sang Dutch to that girl. And they sing, and so it's Sinterklaas. And when I was researching, they still celebrate on the 6th, St. Nicholas Day. To this day, they celebrate that. So in those areas, and even in France, they do. But to hear Sinterklaas over the centuries, I'm sure that other places have, well, and it's been Americanized, and we hear Santa Claus. So, just like the Kris Kringle, somehow it got morphed. But Kringle, see, when I was looking it up, I was thinking, well, because Kringle is also a pastry. It's a Scandinavian pastry. And I thought somehow, by some silly way, it's because it's a holiday pastry, it got, that's how he got another name. So I don't know how he ended up with the reindeer. I don't know how he ended up, but I can imagine, because I mean, how did he end up in the North Pole? I don't know, but I'm sure there's somehow, because of the fact that St. Nicholas's legend went as far as the Scandinavian, and it is possible because Scandinavian culture latched on to the St. Nicholas, and they're still celebrating. It's possible that the idea of the snow and all that, that's how Santa ended up in the snow, and that sort of thing. How he ended up an elf, who knows? It's unknown, but we're in the 21st century, 21st century. I mean, in my lifetime, we've gone from the 20th century to the 21st century, so you gotta think, it went from the 4th century, and, but yeah, the legend of St. Nicholas, or the legend of Santa Claus, is not a fictional character. It's off of an actual man, and over the centuries, it's just continued to, there's been continuous adding on to this legend. Unlike King Arthur, who's pretty much stayed consistent. But this one is a little different. So, me personally, I have to go with everyone else who's saying this is crazy, this is where it's gone way over the top, because knowing that it's based off an actual person and Santa is based off of a legend. I mean, the suit is based off of Father Christmas from Henry VIII, something that Henry VIII started. Sinterklaas is pretty much morphing Santa Claus. And then you have Kris Kringle is just American version of something that Martin Luther came up with. I'm not going to try and say it again because I think I'm butchering it, but I will of course put everything in the description for you to look up and see all that. And so, and again, it's not even a jab at the LGBTQ community, because of the fact that the community was actually saying this is over the top. I mean, there were several comments that were saying just leave Santa alone. And I was even talking to a couple friends of mine who are gay and lesbian, and even one of my transgender friends, and they were saying, I can't believe that they're attacking Santa. Just leave him alone. So, no, but, yeah, he's not a fictional character. He is actually based off of a man from the 4th century, and then over the years, his legend has just been added on. So, I really hope that you don't see this as attacking anyone, because it's just been something that has never really been talked about. So,